And hello guys, welcome to episode 18 of the SKapade show, and we are delighted to announce that we are with Rachel McTavish.
Welcome along, Rachel.
Thanks very much for having me here.
Yes.
It's a massive pleasure to have you in our wee studio.
It's great, I like it. This. What I like is that I don't know how much they can see at home, but this really trendy wall, and then you've got your little tiny B&Q pine shelves.
Yes. No, we don't. They're rustic.
Sorry, no. And then
rustic.
it's even more edgy and dangerous over there, just off camera.
They don't see over there. It's like the live stream as well. We do it in front of the wall, and everybody's always like, "Where is this used film at?" You know, it's a massive warehouse.
I know, but putting a bag over my head to drive me here was a bit much.
That was a wee bit much.
You're not allowed to know. So, Rachel, you are, well, quite notorious through Scotland in terms of being a TV presenter, and you've been doing that for the last 15 years?
I've been a TV presenter for about 25 years, but up in Scotland, 12.
Okay. So how, I mean, do you want to maybe just really start from the beginning?
How did it all begin?
How
did it all begin?
Well, I didn't want to be on camera when I started off.
Right, okay.
I specialised in audio editing at university. I went to Bournemouth. Bournemouth at the time it's got a great reputation now, but Bournemouth University at the time was one of the few that actually had a working TV studio, and it had Avid editing, soundscape, all the things that now you take for granted. But back then, no universities had heard of Avid, and it was very much that Avid were testing them out. So I thought, well, at least if I go there, I'll come away with some skills. But we had to do stuff in front of camera and behind camera, and I was always asking to be the VT operator in the gallery. I never wanted to be on camera, and so it was a bit of a change when I actually, although I specialised in that, I came out and I've got a job as a video journalist for a TV station it was a cable TV station called Channel 1, and they're in London. They'd been going quite a few years, but they were based on, I think it's Channel 10 News in New York, and they'd been set up in exact same model. So I started at Channel 1. That was my first job after university. And do you know what's really shocking is that I was paid the same back then that TV companies are paying video journalists now.
Wow.
So that was 25 years ago. Yeah, so I was 20, it was about 22 years ago. And so that money hasn't changed, but that really shocks me. So when I see the young ones in the newsroom who are starting up as video journalists, and they're shelling out so much in rent, and I cannot credit that things haven't changed in the industry at all.
Yeah. Is that due to just not be the same amount of money not being in the industry just now compared to what it was?
I don't know, because when I started up, all the cameramen used to say to me, "Oh, you won't believe how much money we used to have and the expenses we used to have, and we used to go on foreign trips, and they'd give us 30 grand in US dollars to put in the secret compartment in the bottom of the rucksack." And
Sounds a bit ominous.
Well, to get past checkpoints and things like that. And you know, I had an expense account as a video journalist when I started working for ITN. I had a brand new company car. You just charged everything to the company. And these kids have got none of that now. So, yeah, I started working for Channel 1, and that was in London. Really good, great grounding. And they put me up in a flat on Harley Street. So right in the West End.
Wow.
Absolutely incredible. And I worked there for about 3 or 4 months. That was my training. And then they set up Channel 1 Liverpool. And Liverpool, my hometown. And so with both my parents being very big in the arts in Liverpool, I had great contacts. And so I started as a video journalist there.
You've got an amazing Scouse accent as well that you done off camera.
Oh, thanks. Sounds as a pound. Yeah.
So like in terms of Liverpool, obviously it's not one of the places you think first off for TV. You'd think more music and stuff. So did you find it hard trying to get opportunities there, or the fact that this was kind of moving over?
It was pure luck. that was all it was, pure and simple. Because I agree, Manchester is where you think of now as where the TVs. But even back then, Granada had the huge offices in Key Street in Manchester. So you had Coronation Street, you had enormous big TV studios which could fit in hundreds and hundreds of people in a live audience, and that's to some extent gone now. But Liverpool had the Albert Dock, and they did Granada reports down at the Albert Dock in Liverpool, and it was brilliant for music and theatre. I'd been very part of the theatre scene. I'd been in the Playhouse Youth Theatre, and there's a lot of people like David Morrissey now, and a guy who's going, I cannot remember, is it something Graham? It might be Stephen Graham. He's going to be the main part in Line of Duty when that comes out later on this year. All these people were just part of the scene at the Playhouse Youth Theatre, and I started there when I was about 11, and these guys were all 18, 19, and they seemed really cool, but they never segregated you, the young ones from the older, and I would work backstage at the theatre on productions that they were doing, and it was...
Invaluable experience.
Oh, it was amazing. Once again, though, hated going on stage because I got stage fright, I got nerves. So why am I doing what I'm doing?
It's a bit of stage fright and nerves. It takes time, doesn't it? We were just talking about that there, you know. Sometimes when those mics go live, I know it was like the first time we started out in radio, and I was shaking like a leaf. You know, like really nervous about you know messing something up, playing the wrong track, or like, you know, maybe saying something you shouldn't have. It's like so nerve-wracking, but practice, isn't it? Practice.
And I think the other thing is,
out of you, you know?
When I was doing plays at the Playhouse, you were learning somebody else's lines, whereas in news, you've got a script in front of you, and then even if the script's taken away and you've just got to interview somebody, you're being yourself. You're not learning. It was just learning line after line and knowing that somebody else was relying on you to give them the correct feed for things to continue. And I was rubbish at that. I'd be the sort of person where the prompt backstage would be going, oh my God, where's she gone to now? Where's she gone to now? And the look of terror, and the person opposite as I'm missing out huge chunks, just willing the thing to be over.
Oh no! So fast forward then. So you are behind camera at this point. You're doing editing. You're getting involved in the industry. You're starting to meet people. What happened then? How did the opportunity come about for you to then?
Well, when I started in Liverpool at Channel 1, on the very first day, there was a guy called Nick Pollard came down, and Nick Pollard is really well known in the industry. He was at that point in charge of Channel 1 in London, and he then went on to be head of Sky News, and he said, right, well, we need somebody as a launch presenter, somebody to be in front of camera. Rachel, you do it, and we'll start off by doing like a 10-minute guided tour behind the scenes. Right, get a cameraman. Right, Rachel, if you can just
forced you into it, basically.
Force me into it. And
the best way sometimes. Yeah,
because my auto cue test that I'd done down in London at Channel 1 was horrific. And although I'd been in front of camera when I was out being a video journalist, it was very different because I would prepare a piece to say, and then I'd sign off Rachel McTavish, Channel 1, Liverpool, you know, and that was your piece, and it would be 10, 15 seconds long, and that would be all that people saw. And the other times, it was much more natural. If I was being filmed by a cameraman, I was just doing things and interviewing people. I could cope with that, but reading words off an auto cue, and they'd said, speak slowly. So I think I talked a bit like that. And it took a while, and I think my eyes probably crept. You could see them creeping along the lines, but.
So that's just like what Stephen was saying, though. That's just down to practice, though, isn't it? You know, like
there's something just about, like, I mean, you've obviously got someone in your ear as well.
Yeah, you've got somebody in your ear all the time, just chatting away. But you get used to it. You
do. I was going to ask you that, because that's the ultimate multitask, isn't it? Where you've got like something to do, you're reading, and if something happens in your ear, you've got to adjust to that as well. I mean, it sounds
you
crazy.
you get used to that really quickly. And I think also women are very good at that, because somebody could be gossiping out there in that corridor, and I would have every bit of that gossip. It would have come in whilst I'm doing the interview.
A bit of a superpower you've got, and you've acquired there.
I don't know how I could deal with that, like having someone in.
I know, imagine that. Like,
I couldn't do that. Jesus Christ. Just like, oh no! But
You're quite like winging things, don't you?
yeah,
I've
absolutely.
noticed that.
Yes.
That's the difference between me and Galloni. Anytime I've had to do a talk, I'm the note taker. I need to see, or I'll freak out if I don't see at least a structure of what's to be said, when to finish it, how long do we have, and I'll be going over it. But whereas
I love the chaos. Just tell me what I need to do, I'll do it.
You know,
But that's what's really good about watching you two on stage. When we did the Young Enterprise Scotland thing,
Hamden,
and you were leading it, and then you just
offshoot every now and again,
and just coming in at the end of all his sentences. But that's a good double act.
Yeah.
You need that though.
You do.
It's yin and yang, isn't it?
Well, we've did a lot of that, you know, from the beginning, like building the business. It really was just using the skill sets within the team to really try and, what would you add into this or whatever, and then it's like, well, I'll try and sell it. Let me try and present it.
Built the business on that whole idea. Like, you know, if you're coming into it, then you look at what's already been done well. But how can you bring in something that you're great at and combine it as one movement? Really, you know, and that's what we were able to do. I was more running the business in the back end and obviously producing music, whereas Gal came in and he was great at the meetings and going out to networking events and stuff. So combine that all as one.
Doing all the schmoozing.
Yes, and plus I love doing talks. I've done a bit of stand-up comedy, things like that. So I enjoy that side of it. And in fact, I'm really loving it even more and more now as we do these things like the yes thing and stuff. I'm loving that, you know. I want to be doing more of that sort of stuff. So but I'm always up for learning and structure.
No, but it's good fun it's good fun to watch you on stage because you're entertaining and informative. But the laughs, it was when I saw a lot of the teachers, you know, and the wiping away tears.
See, that's what I'm glad. I done a raffle at the weekend for the police, and it was a really tough crowd because they're all just desperate to hear the answer, the outcome of the raffle. So I'm trying to crack jokes, but they're all like, just going to shout my name out, mate. You know? I'm like, here I am going on a tangent, here I am. But good fun.
So I'm just back to the industry.
Yes, bringing it back, isn't it?
Yes, well, that's what he does. And see,
that's
you say you like a tangent as well. Also.
Yeah.
That's all good, though. Nice balance. So you're talking about, what was interesting there is about the changes in the industry that's happened. And I know for one, the music industry's changed.
Massively.
I mean, massively. Streaming has been the biggest one because artists aren't paid 25 grand a remix anymore. It's like literally you're paid in pennies off of plays on Spotify and stuff. So the money has switched hands entirely.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what comparisons there is there maybe with the media side.
Well, I noticed that things have come full circle. When I started off at ITN, I then I'd heard of video journalist opportunities at ITN in London, and I knew that they were wanting to get a network of video journalists right across the UK to supplement their cameramen and camerawomen, and it was very, very new. So that started off. ITN then hired me as a video journalist, and I was covering the Midlands, and really unpopular with cameramen. They hated the fact that I would film something, then take it back, edit it. You know, as far as they could see, they were cutting out a lot of highly paid jobs out of the industry by, you know, one girl on 24 grand and a Ford Escort. You know, I was able to nip around everywhere. And then after a while, ITN ditched video journalists. And it all went quiet on that front. And now back again, STV have just announced that although they've got some video journalists, they're going to make all their reporters multimedia, I think it's called now, but they're going to expect all of their reporters to be skilled in using the camera. So it's come back again, and they're cutting back on craft cameras, as they call them.
That's interesting.
That's interesting. It's something that's happened in a lot of different industries as well. I mean, look at the police. We've been talking a lot to the police recently, and they're stretched beyond belief. They're expected to turn up to that type of crime, a cyber type of crime, a social media issue. Yeah. And it all comes on the police at the end of the day. So
and expect to know how to deal with each very different one.
Yeah. Exactly. Which is just insane. So it's almost like something's happened where there's more expectations. You need to learn more skills, really, and that does strike me as something that's happening in the industry in general.
I think that's one of the issues that I think is happening at STV at the moment, is that they're concerned about the drop in quality. If you're going to have somebody who's a really skilled reporter then going out and also having to concentrate on filming sound levels, because you know what it's like. If the sound is bad in something,
then you can forget it.
It's awful, absolutely awful, because it's very limited what you can do once you come
the
back to the
visuals can
office.
be worse, but the sounds need to be good.
Oh, if you've not got sound, or say somebody's not directed the mic correctly and you're running off the top mic and you've got all the ambient sound as well, then it's unusable, isn't it? And I think quite rightly, a lot of the reporters are really, really concerned that you're going to see a huge drop in quality. And the viewers at home won't understand what it is. They'll just understand that, oh, that senior reporter there, she used to be really good. He used to be really good. What's happened? Oh, there's just something not quite right. It looks different. And they won't be able to get as many ingredients for the story because they'll be concentrating on getting the shots. Whereas at the moment, you've got a craft camera out getting the shots, and they're trained to look around, get some really nice shots, pull focus on stuff, and the reporter is out there. Sometimes they'll have a producer with them, chasing up leads, seeing somebody off in the corner. Oh, see if they'll give us a statement, or, and you're going to expect one person to do all that and then drive back to the studio, edit it all, and put it out online.
On time as well.
And on the 6 o'clock news, and hit all their deadlines. Really tough.
This is going to be an interesting shape. What would you say are the key differences between working in England and Scotland in the newsroom?
The only thing that I've noticed is size, but ITN was a great newsroom to work in. But what you also had at ITN was that in the big building on Gray's Inn Road, you had ITN News, who also provided Channel 4 News. So when you're in the canteen downstairs, you've got Jon Snow from Channel 4 News. He was always nipping in and out. You had Channel 5 when I first started there. So you had them with the very edgy news perching on the edge of the desk and all the brightly coloured. And then you've got, when I started at ITN, Trevor McDonald, John Suchet, Mark Austin, Mary Nightingale. You've got all those
the recognisable faces,
and it was all in one building. So as a video journalist, I was having to service all of those news outlets. So what I would do is, in a morning, I would get a story that was happening on my patch in the Midlands. Say it could even be a sports story. So I was trained in everything. So say at the time, Martin O'Neill was in charge of Leicester, and there might be a really big name or something that even Channel 4 might want one line on. And so I would have to go out, and Channel 5 would want one particular way of shooting it and one angle. Channel 4 would want just one very short clip or fresh footage of Martin O'Neill. ITN Channel 3 would want a long interview that their sports editor could then cut down. So you were whizzing around. Yeah. And then up in STV in Glasgow or Edinburgh, much smaller newsroom. Edinburgh newsroom, tiny. Glasgow newsroom, great, a lot of hustle and bustle, but you're just a much tighter team.
Yeah. Just get a statement, hen.
Do you know what, Stephen? That's exactly what it's like. That's it.
Down south, like, we want a shot like this. Like, we're like, just get a story with the guy. It's fine. No, that's amazing.
You'd say, what's your top line? What's top line?
Right, okay. What's the
Sell
top
it
line?
to us. What's the top line?
I mean, that is it. Essentially, is selling news, isn't it? Because you want people to watch and bring them.
It's catching attention, isn't it?
Yes.
Have you noticed since the boom of the internet and like everyone's got their own platform? I mean, look at what we're doing just now, and look at how that's blown up. Have you noticed a big difference in? I mean, of course, there's viewing figures on traditional methods, and then just different types of content. Do you think people are maybe more so on internet, or do you think there's still a strong case for the?
I think where you go to, what you get from likes of BBC and STV are that you recognise those reporters, that they've done all the research. I think there's still, I know fake news is a phrase that's bandied around a lot, and it's not necessarily fake, but have we got both sides of the story? There was something that illustrated it quite well yesterday that had gone viral. There was a baseball game in the States, and one of the players threw a ball out. A young lad went to catch it on the front row, and this other couple scrabbled for it, and the husband got it and gave it over to his wife, and the lad was sitting there like that, and instantly that went viral. Everybody thought they knew the story. Oh, that's terrible. Look at that. They fought that boy for that ball. And don't worry, because we found later on that the Cubs had done this for the boy, and he was standing there with his 2 signed balls. And then 2 or 3 people who'd been at the game said, no, what you didn't see was that boy had already got 2 balls from the players, which the other man behind had caught for him, and he'd given them 2. And this one, he was like, oh, I'll give this one to my wife. So, that's just one example. It's a snapshot that the internet gives you, that you don't know the full story. These people have been pilloried all around Twitter and Facebook, torn apart. And that wasn't the full story. Whereas the STV and BBC reporters, they're digging, they're trying to get a balanced view. People might not want to give a statement on the other side, but they do. They're always looking for fairness.
I suppose, though, at the same time, the answer was also found through the internet, though, going through the comments, where someone had then seen the other side. So it is interesting.
But very few people.
Oh, well, of course. That. But it is like anything now, because of that, you could now go in on the internet and say, oh, well, here they're talking about some publication here on the news. I'm actually going to go and read and see what this article's saying. And that's the interesting thing about it now. It's harder to hide things now. Everything's a lot more transparent because of it, and careers boom and also fall because of the internet as well, because of things like that, where you don't get the full story, and then that's it, career ruined, and no one's got insight into it actually. Interesting.
It's interesting. It can totally go full circle. Like when the internet first comes on, everyone's on it. And then when you realise it's full of really not a lot of factual based stuff, it's just everyone.
You've got to
everyone's got a voice, and really that can just wear you down. And then you can actually return or end up returning back to STV, BBC to get a bit of trustworthy, polished, recognisable people.
Although people still lob accusations of bias at you all the time.
Of course.
That's the nature of the game, though, isn't it? You're going to get that.
I mean, there's always the fight for that, really, I suppose. Now, something I want to delve into that I seen that was so interesting, right? Really interesting. You've got a scared look, don't worry. Right, I want to ask you 2 things. So first, what has been your craziest moment on TV? Right, and for me, looking in, it's got to be, I couldn't believe you were reporting the 9/11 when it happened.
Yep, I was on air for ITN when they had the news channel, their 24-hour news channel, and a lot of the people who are watching your podcast or listening to it won't even realise that ITN had a channel like BBC News 24, but it was a real baptism of fire for me, because I'd started there after having been a video journalist, and I knew they were starting up the channel, and I kept on asking, can I get a job? Can I get a job? And they gave me a job. I worked my way up through the time slots in the day, and so I was on air at 10 to 2, and as the first plane hit, and that was one of the craziest moments. I suppose the distance of time, it's quite traumatic at the time, but now the passage of time means that you do go, that was crazy. And just seeing the live feed coming into the studio. So what they say in a situation like that is when they realise they've got a story, they say, right, we're going open-ended. And when you go open-ended, that means you take away the auto cue. So you're just looking down a black lens, and you don't have, the words and the scripts going around. And when they said you go open-ended, then it is totally over to you. And there was no internet in the studio at the time. All you had was the live feed coming in. I think we had one source was CNN. Can't remember what the rest of it was. But you didn't even have people on phones filming things. They were filtering through.
All of that.
It was. Yeah. What you got was that live feed coming through that got really, really traumatic at points. So you would, the first plane hit, and it looked like it was just an awful tragedy.
Like an accident, yeah.
And then as soon as you could see the second plane coming in, then you thought, no, it can't be. But then you realised this is a terrorist attack, and all the time people are sort of screaming stuff at you in your ear, and you're trying to remember from when you've been on holiday in New York, you know, the layout of Lower Manhattan and where things are in relation. And you're also, all the things you're thinking about, well, it's 10 to 9 in the morning there, so what would be happening, the layout, and it just got really traumatic. But what I do remember was about half an hour after the second plane, people started saying Osama bin Laden straight away. And
I wonder where that comes from.
Well, people, I suppose the older generation of news reporters and war reporters in the newsroom, you know, everybody outside. Behind me, when you look at it on my YouTube video, you can see people running behind the glass and people talking. And obviously everybody starting to say things like, well, there's no Twitter. So you weren't looking, and there wasn't a sort of general mood emerging. But talking about Osama bin Laden, and that was when things started to change, and we started to phone up the terrorism experts, and they were starting to then come into the studio and sort of.
Wow.
But even at that stage, you didn't know for definite. But the other interesting thing that was happening at the same time was that you had the attack on the Pentagon. And you had the
Virginia
flight
crash,
yeah. You had that other plane coming down where the passengers had overpowered the terrorists in the cockpit. But then you had like 4 or 5 other things. So say somewhere completely unrelated, a car backfired. All of a sudden, reports coming in of an explosion here, an explosion there. And you had to try and pick through. Because you don't want to be responsible for putting out misinformation. But at the same time, the facts were just really, really sketchy.
Well, they would be. It was so fresh.
Yeah,
you know, even to be accusing like Osama bin Laden on the day of it is an interesting one, because it's had no time to actually investigate yet. So you've got to wonder.
It's such a massively traumatic event that I can't think of anything bigger. And because of something like that, just the after effects of something like that happen, as you say, it's like different stories, people panicking, you know, you'd hear it, if that was happening, you'd hear a noise outside, you'd think it'd be related just because of the gravity,
the fear of it.
You know? So that does sound like
it was something else. And so I think I was on air for about 45 minutes. Then I came off air. Then I went back on, and because they were just trying to keep all the presenters fresh. So then there was another girl went in, and in the time that I'm out of the studio, I'm there just trying to find out as much information as I can, and then going back in. But the difference is when you go back in, and I think at the top of the hour, at the 3 o'clock, we decided to do the bongs, as they call them, where you go dong, you know, and terrorist attack on New York, dong, plane comes down, and that was really nerve-wracking, going into the studio in the 3-minute break at 3 minutes to 3, knowing that people were tuning in at the top of the hour to watch the headlines. And so instead of it just sort of evolving and you being in the seat, and it was starting to be scripted, and that's when the heart just started going like mad, because you couldn't suddenly pause and break. And you know, when your breathing starts to get really shallow, and I was still only young. I was in my I don't know, late 20s. Can't remember.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You know, especially like behind that lens, we talk about this obviously on a much smaller scale, but like behind that lens, you've got so many people. Does that ever creep into your mind? Like
sometimes,
especially in 2001 as well.
I suppose
no one was on the internet.
That's your source, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it creeps into your mind, especially sometimes when you're trying to be very aware of what people are saying legally. That's when you're aware how many people are watching. I did an interview with Mohammed Al-Fayed, and he had, just as a throwaway line at the end, he said, and you know who's responsible for the death of Diana and Dodi? And named a member of the royal family. And I was just like, oh my God, this is live TV. And I was like, Mr. Al-Fayed, with due respect, that is your personal opinion, you know, not the view of ITN. And it's things like that. When that happens, it's...
Sure, that brings a few viewers though. Statements like that.
I was just hoping nobody was watching, but it is then that you're aware, because you've got a very fleeting moment to try and correct if something's gone out that's.
And And that's what cuts the
dangerous.
The good presenters from the excellent ones, because it really does seem like you've got to be just so aware.
You've got to be switched on.
And ready to act. If anything happens, really instantly as well.
Because it is down to you saying the right or wrong thing.
I had to correct a situation or something, Fascinating.
Right, let's lighten it now. Yes. Let's lighten it now. Right, what would you say is your most awkward TV moment? Obviously, that was slightly awkward there.
Some of them have been soap stars. I won't particularly name them, but soap stars. They think that they are the bee's knees, and they're watched by millions, so you can't take that away from them.
Yeah.
But it seems to be that soap stars just have wrong idea of their own importance. And then you can interview somebody like Richard Attenborough, and you're talking about him directing this and being in this and that, and somebody like that is so humble, and yet you can interview somebody from Coronation Street and they will be the rudest person you have ever met. Don't get me wrong, some of the soap stars, fabulous, and they know that that's what's made them famous, and you want to ask them about their time in the Rovers, and they're brilliant, but others don't want to. Others are like, no, I'm sorry, but that's why you're in that play, because they need bums on seats. Yeah. That's what made you famous. I'm going to ask you about it.
Yeah. Well, that's what the people want to know, isn't it?
I don't know if this is true, it's just maybe an observation of mine, but is it not quite hard to leave a soap and do something else? Because
I think so.
Kind of household.
It's hard for a lot of them.
It's
like X Factor and all that as well.
That's
I think
why
it's
they
hard
come
to break. Yeah. It's hard to break from that taboo.
The one I remember is like Barry Stenders is just like he couldn't really get away from
can
that.
He ended up taking the piss though and kidding he was calling himself that.
Do you know what? Sean, I think his name's Sean Williamson. He was a joy. So you had, I'd wondered, this was before extras, and I wondered, what's Sean going to be like? And do you know what? He was a joy. So you do some work and you get their CV sent through and you have to do a bit of digging about them. And it said, there was one line on his CV that said, licensed taxi driver. And so I asked him about it when he came in, and he went, oh yeah. He said, but you're not working all the time, are you? And you've got a mortgage to pay. And I thought, oh, what breath of fresh air to hear him say, I can do an airport run for you. How does 25 quid sound? That sort of thing. I just thought that was brilliant.
That's good.
That's humble.
And that's probably why people like him get quite a bit of work, because they're nice to work with. And do you know who, as another soap star who was really good? Jason Donovan.
Right.
He was, it would have been about 8-9 years ago, and it was a program called the 5:30 show. So it was just a tea time show. I was actually going
to ask you about the 5:30 show. Yeah,
tea time show, 5:30. Just half an hour. It was great. We got in some really good names, and whoever was appearing in local theatres or doing gig in town came in. Really good fun. And Jason Donovan came in, and you thought, oh, is he going to be a tricky one? He went round and he signed, people had brought in Neighbours albums and things like that. He went round the newsroom, signed them for everybody. And then that awful thing of technology letting you down, and we're in the studio and we're on air, and they said, the server's fallen over. It's always the server falling over. Don't know what it means. But anyway, server's fallen over. Just keep on going. We've got nothing to go to. So all our pre-recorded packages, nothing could play. So what was meant to be a 6-minute interview with Jason Donovan ended up being 24 and a half minutes. Right. And at the end of it, he was just like that. Oh, that was a bit longer than I expected. And we delved into everything. And, I think, was it the Face magazine that he'd taken to court when they'd... was it accusing him of being gay or that sort of... There'd been a big court case and things that you were dredging up all these facts from the back of your mind. And he answered everything, talked about Kylie, the whole lot. And I was just like, oh, what a joy. Because it could have been somebody from EastEnders who just was like,
Yeah.
Not saying a word.
You've obviously mentioned a couple of names. Richard Attenborough being one of the huge ones. David Attenborough's brother. Pretty cool. I'd seen you spoke to Susan Boyle as well.
Yeah, that was really difficult. It was before she had all the security and protection around her, and we found her name in the phone book and phoned her up, and she was like, "Oh yeah, but I don't drive. Can you send a taxi?" So we sent a taxi over to Blackburn.
Was that just as she's won it?
Yeah, it was just like 2 weeks after. It was 2 days after she'd been on. Phoned her up, sent a taxi. She came in, but she was really a really vulnerable person. She'd not had any media training. Naturally, a very private person with her own issues, and she was just like a rabbit in the headlights. But it was then at least one of those interviews that was used all the time.
Yeah. I think as well, though, it did bring that sense of reality as to who she actually was. It's like, it's part of why she won. You know, if she'd been this ready-made product, you know, it doesn't work like that, you know, and for her, it was her authenticity that got her to the place, because everyone was like, she's never going to win
that was 10 years ago, so 9-10 years ago. So things have changed since then, and everybody's much more polished, aren't they? They've all had little one-off record deals and things like that by the time they start emerging on these programs.
Yeah, and then even things like that, you can just YouTube nowadays. Yeah. You know, like, okay, how to get better presenting, you know, and you watch a few wee things. So that is interesting. What was so the Richard one was good. What other sort of big names have you done, or ones that you were like, I can't believe I'm about to speak to this person? Or
do you know, at ITN you got very blasé, but you would speak to the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister. You'd speak to them all, members of the cabinet. Every day you'd speak to 5 or 6 of them. When you were doing the 7 till 10 slot on the news channel in the morning, just because everybody was floating around Millbank, you sent a camera along, they were all up for interview, and that was really interesting. But you got very, very laid back, and when you're a video journalist out and about, you're asked to go and or you'll get 10 minutes with William Hague. Will you ask them this list of questions? Blah, blah. I do remember one time with William Hague, and there was a big long conveyor belt of people interviewing him, and he was about to address a live broadcast, and he said, right, okay, I can fit you in really quickly, a 10-minute interview, and I got my tie mic caught in his silk tie, you know, when you're like that. And they're going, okay, Mr. Hague, we're going to go live in 3 minutes, and I'm like that, I'm pulling threads out of his silk tie with my tie mic.
That's got to be one of the more awkward ones.
Yeah, and you've still got to move your tripod and your camera. That's the life of being a video journalist. That's what it's really like.
Yeah, of course.
Was he okay? Was his patience all right?
Yeah,
Was he?
He was really funny, actually. He was a nice guy. Whatever you think of his politics, he was a good talker and nice guy.
Okay, so we've obviously heard background as to what you've done and how you've got there. So currently, what is your job role? And also, you've got a side hustle, which we'll talk about as well.
So my sideline is I've had a jewellery company for 10 years. At the moment, what I'm also doing is a lot of conference work. I was at the Scottish Parliament a few days ago, hosting a 2-day conference there for journalists. They'd taken just over 100 young journalists from 52 different countries from around the world, and brought them all to the Scottish Parliament to hear from the absolute finest speakers from the BBC, different news organisations, and just to give them a taster of all these different journalists and different facets, and experienced war reporters, political journalists. And that was a real eye-opener. And I love doing things like that. So conferences, I've started to do more and more every year. And they're great fun, not just because they're well paid, but also because you have to get up to speed on that area, and you do all your background research. So one that I do for NewsQuest and the Herald is the Diversity and Inclusion Conference, and that makes your brain hurt. That's from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and talking about roles of race, diversity, gender stereotyping, LGBT, trans, everything in the workplace, racial inequality. That is just like, whew. So it's the second year I've done it. Really enjoy it. But it's something when you're just news reading and reading an auto cue, sometimes you feel that you don't get to use your brain very much. And that's what I enjoy about the conferences is the fact that you are really, really pushing yourself to the limit.
You're needed.
Yeah, because you've got people who've paid 150 quid for a ticket sitting in the audience about to go back to their company and tell them all about diversity and inclusion, and you've got to make sure that that's worth it for them. So you're doing panel discussions of 6 to 8 people 4 or 5 times on the stage, and you've got to be across every single person's backstory.
That's great. It's how we obviously met yourself as well, through the Young Enterprise one, which is great. It's great to see you in action and doing that.
You're amazing at it.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a bit different as well, because you've got really young kids, and it's just fascinating seeing the enthusiasm, because sometimes some of the audience members, when you ask them for any questions, they're a bit jaded and they've been sent there by the boss, they don't want to be there, whereas those young people were totally up for it.
Wanted to be there.
They're out of school, aren't they? They're getting that break. And it's just a big day of inspiration, as Jeff puts it. It's like everyone's there really buzzing, really positive, and that's why they get everyone together to do it. It's great. No, do you see yourself doing more of that kind of work as you progress?
Yes, I really enjoy doing it, and so I've been booked for one week after next, I think. Don't know any details about it yet. Intrapreneurial.
Okay.
So Intrapreneurial Scotland. So that's going to be a new one that the News Quest organisation are doing.
Amazing.
So.
How did that kind of work come around then? Was that from people seeing you on TV?
It was, I don't know. I think it started from TV, but there's a lady called Lynn Kennedy who runs Businesswoman Scotland magazine, and she wanted to take some of the ideas from Businesswoman Scotland magazine out on the road and do like a road show. And one of the people in STV, one of the PAs in the gallery, had said, "Oh, do you know who you need? You need Rachel for that." And so went out and did that, and now I do about 10 or 12 events for her each year. Amazing. And I've going to be going out to Arnold Clark and speaking to them, some of their staff, taking the roadshow out to them, and so hopefully we're going to get it out to other companies. But that, I have to say, Lynn was the first person who put her faith in me, and she was just building it up. I was building it up. So we made mistakes along the way, but we were both, I gave her a good price. She gave me her trust. We did a deal.
And that's how it starts. Do you know what I mean? So the site hustle then, the McTavish collection.
Yes.
Already
very
cracking cool. Name. Sounds so Scottish as well. I love it.
I thought my maiden name is McTavish, and I married Hughes, a Glaswegian.
We've got a Hughes in the studio
as well.
So I was not going to lose my Scouse McTavish.
No, definitely not.
And I thought, it'll make me more palatable when I move up to Scotland.
McTavish.
Yeah. Well, even though I got married before I came up here, I thought, I'll keep hold of it, because I got myself a name as McTavish, and I thought, but coming up here, there'll be loads of McTavishes. I didn't realise it was a joke name in Scotland as well. There's hardly any McTavishes up here either.
No, it's a standout name.
It is.
Both for yourself and for the company, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And the McTavish collection, it runs off it runs off the tongue well. So I'd read somewhere that it was sort of born out of you wanting particular stuff that you'd like to wear on screen, but you couldn't find affordable stuff.
No, and it was, I hated spending money on suit jackets. It was just the most boring thing in the world. To go out and spend 50 or 60 quid on another suit jacket. If people are watching this going, ooh, she's cheap. But, another Zara suit jacket that you only were going to wear for work, and just felt really dull. So I thought, well, if I just wear the same jackets all the time, it just changed the jewellery.
Jazzed it up.
Yeah. So I also wanted to keep the prices really low, and because I don't have a shop, I'm just online, I can keep the prices really affordable.
Yes.
And I can design things, get them made up, and cut out the middleman.
Yep. Well, that's really what I took from the website in terms of like all the stuff looks really classy, really quite elegant,
dead classy,
but it's affordable, and
like
I think
me.
that and I think that's really really important to today's market.
And I've kept the price down, so it's been going for 10 years, and there's only a couple of pieces that are over 30 quid. I've just always fought really hard and negotiated really hard to keep my prices low, but hasn't affected the quality.
Yeah, that's great. You know, so there's a couple of things you mentioned there, and what this show's really all about is trying to inspire people. And there's a couple of lessons in there, what we were chatting about before, about how you got that break into what you're doing now, the conferences and stuff.
Yeah.
And it stemmed from doing a good job and word of mouth, essentially, doesn't it?
Yeah, because you started out, you didn't even want to be in camera.
It's like the simple things.
But I would like to think that, because when I used to do a lot of corporate films, and they'd call me One Take McT, because everybody's up against it filming. You know what it's like. You've paid for everybody to be in a space together, and if you can do it in one day's filming, or even better, half a day's filming,
you're a legend.
Then it's like
Everyone's job's easier.
So, especially when I go and do pieces for, I think, Scottish Water, for example, and you would have a 10-minute piece to camera on auto cue where you're walking through their offices and talking about this and that. If you can do that in one take, instead of going, oh, I'm sorry, we need to go again, then you get a bit of a reputation of,
they're going to love you.
She's
Reliable.
speedy, you know. Yeah. And that, I think, combined with pricing yourself correctly, it's a winning combination. But also, before I went to university, I worked at a small production house in Shropshire, and you know, when you're going out filming, you carry the tripod, you help with setting everything up and doing all the cabling, and you don't ever think that you are
just a presenter.
Yeah, or you're too precious to do that. I'm sorry, I don't do that now, whatever. You know, if you've learnt the skills to do something and you can do it, then don't sit there just waiting for people to set up round you, you know.
Be a team player. I'd probably say a good way to wrap up the podcast would be, what advice would you give to Rachel just starting out on the road of getting into TV? 21-year-old Rachel, what would you say to her now?
Don't pluck your eyebrows, because you'll have to spend a lot of money getting them put back in.
Here's the first bit of advice.
Just be nice to people. Ask them questions. Don't be afraid to say, look, I'm sorry if this might make me look really stupid. I still say this now, but I don't understand, especially if it's a story that you are about to be shown up in front of somebody. Do your research. Send out speculative emails to people and ask them for advice. You know, I've been asked for advice by lots of people, and in turn, I asked for lots of advice. John Suchet in particular, very, very good at helping out. And in turn, I would hope that other people have been able to ask me, you know, for what it's worth. This as well. Yeah, what it's worth. I would say, if you're going into broadcasting as well, work on your voice. There's a lot of people, even if you think you're going to be behind the scenes. When I first started out, there was a Scottish producer down in London who said to me, he said a few things, but he didn't like my northern twang. So I think you can still tell that I'm from Liverpool, but I think you've got to try and bring your voice down. This is something my husband always says to me as well. You know, you can tell when you get nervous because your voice goes really high. and an audience, somebody watching, a viewer or somebody in the audience, if your voice starts to creep up and get higher and higher, then people go, she's nervous. I'm not comfortable watching her because she thinks she's going to mess up. So this goes for males and females. Try and bring your voice down. And
it's this neutral tone, isn't it?
Bring your voice down, speak calmly, clearly, and also that helps you with your breathing. But I think that goes for any job that you're going to do. Don't start talking really high and
breathe. Just breathe.
What else would I say?
What about in terms of getting a job?
I think there's a lot of it to do with luck, but I think if you keep on plugging away at stuff, you'll be fine. But also there's so much more opportunity now with the internet and YouTube for example, you two have created a role for yourself, and that wasn't a job spec that was laid out.
Option, really?
No, it wasn't laid out in a careers advice
No.
sort of lecture at school, was it?
Definitely.
Set up a studios. It's something that you've investigated and you've created a role for yourself, because there are all these roles. And so in 10 years' time, there might be loads of guys doing what you do, but you've been the pioneers who started out. So I think I went down a much more obvious route, because video journalism was just starting out, but it was a recognised role. Whereas now with my jewellery, I just thought, do you know what? I think I can do this. And I didn't need much money to start up. You can build your own website now. You don't need big, expensive websites. You can do your own research. You can start small. You don't need to start with a huge bang and spend thousands.
Yeah.
You really don't need to do that.
True. Yeah, it's an amazing time we live in, actually, when you think about it. It's very enterprising when you can do everything on a proper small budget.
Yes.
Really, which is resonating, obviously, with everyone watching here, you know. It takes an idea like what you do yourself, the jewellery and what we do with the music as well. It's all been done on a very small budget.
Yeah.
And it's inspiring other people as well.
It's just getting done with passion first and foremost.
Because I think being nice, yeah. You see, people remember you, but you have some work experience people who come in and they don't mix and they keep themselves to themselves and they're a bit aloof. Oh, I was still making teas and coffees 10 years into the business. You don't stop just because you get to a certain role. That's
an amazing thing to say, actually. It's really all about that, and it's, you were saying earlier, like, not being afraid of doing any job. You're trained in it, so it's not like you've hit a point where you can't go and help someone with setting a camera up if they're needing a hand. It's like that, and that's, I guess, it's that niceness that will continually create more work and opportunity.
There's space for everybody. Just because I'm a female newsreader doesn't mean there isn't space for more female newsreaders.
But that's a great mentality to have.
But you know who you noticed it in ITN, particularly with the likes of, I know I mentioned John Suchet, but Trevor McDonald. Utterly charming man at the very top of his game.
Very inclusive.
So he was presenting news at 10 when I started there, and I'd be sitting in makeup with him, and we'd both finish at the same time, and he'd open the door and go, "You're the star, you're first." And I mean, it's do you know when you're 22 years old and you've got one of the biggest names in TV being so lovely to you, it makes you feel special, because there'll be a lot of people who are really horrible to you. That's another piece of advice. This is my husband's piece of advice. I'm not going to say who it refers to, but it's been quite a few people along the way.
Which we've said we need to get him on the show as well.
If you sit by the river long enough, you'll watch the bodies of your enemies float past. And it's true. Just
say that one again. I want to hear that again.
Right. If you sit by the river long enough, you'll watch the bodies of your enemies float past.
Okay.
Is it touching on karma, really?
Yeah, nasty people are going to be caught out. You don't need to go out and stick the knife in and be vindictive. Don't worry, they'll get the comeuppance.
Yeah.
Things will happen.
Yeah.
Their shows will get bad ratings.
Yes.
Yeah. They'll be sacked from places.
And exactly, again, with the openness of the internet now, all it takes now is someone to do a live video or leave a bad review, it goes viral, and then you now see their true colours.
But also, the other thing is that there's young video journalists who I'm working with now, who could be my boss in 5 years and in a position to employ me. You
need to be nice to them.
People can suddenly shoot up. I was a video journalist, and I think I jumped 6 pay grades to become a presenter at ITN, and there were some people who were really horrible to me, and I've never forgotten them. And TV and the internet is one of those weird things. Just because somebody's 21 doesn't mean they're not going to go shh.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they could be running a company in 18 months' time and do you know what? She was always really good to work for, and she gave me a bit of a break here. I'm going to call her in and
sort her out.
So much to be,
in a good way.
There's so much to be said for that. We've discussed that in the building of the network and the business. Some people who you meet who are just getting into it, but you see potential in them. It shows you the power of network. Because as everyone's growing older together.
Yeah.
They grow up the position.
And everyone's grown in their position together as well. So it's like, it's such
it's the same in the music game for us. Some of the DJs we know who are at a lower level now are going to be the superstars of the future, and it's like we're already good friends now. So I can understand how that just grows in levels, and that's really important. It's the old treat the janitor like the CEO of a company, because you never know. That might even be someone who's not the janitor who's just visiting or whatever.
Scotland is such a small place, and you're travelling with your music all over the world. I mean, yes, you've got these networks that now aren't just limited to Scotland. You're bumping into people in Ibiza or wherever who you know from different countries.
Or through Facebook and stuff.
And everybody talks, and it is just good to build up that network of people who you like and trust.
Absolutely, and it's
massive.
We look at it as like lifetime connections.
Yeah.
Because it's like I love the industry, and I'll probably be in the industry for a long time. So it's like when you meet someone in it, you're probably
you've got to
hold
on to them. Yeah, you've got to hold on to them, because the industry can be a big, scary, horrible thing as well. So you've got to connect to the people that are on the same wavelength, that you treat each other with respect and grow and advance together, if you like.
Absolutely.
So it's the exact same thing. Well, this has been amazing.
This has been
great.
We could
probably do another one.
This has been really good.
I get the feeling there's some bits of research that you found that you haven't asked me about, so it's fine. Save it for podcast part 2.
I will.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's been absolutely great.
Thank you very much for having me in.
Thanks for coming down.
Brilliant.
I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have. It's been nice to be on the other side of the microphone for a change.
Ask questions instead of asking the questions.
Well, now you'll need to get us on STV. You do know that. We didn't just do this for fun, No, that's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that's been the SKapade Show, episode
18
with Rachel McTavish. Thanks once again.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys soon.
Cheers.